Welcome back to r/Askreddit, where people answer the question, what is your worst neighbor ever story? And guys, if you ever had an awful neighbor, please let us know in the comments or post your story on r/RipeStories on Reddit, where there is a good chance that I will read your story in one of the next videos. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one goes like this. We had next door neighbors who had kids that were a little rowdy, but nothing too bad. Then one of the parents died and the kids went incredibly wild. Over the next few years we had a number of problems, including graffiti spray painted on the house, glass and nails left in a line on our driveway, a full can of ginger ale thrown through our window, dog crap thrown at the house, and condoms filled with corn syrup and flour launched at our house. In addition, the kids started dealing drugs out of the house and we had to deal with a massive increase of noise as they had large parties every weekend and were sitting on the front porch screaming obscenities at each other almost every weekday. We tried calling the cops when we were hit and the cops were aware of the kids from other calls in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, Mother covered for them and would apologize to us privately after the cops left. All the cops could do was give them warnings. We finally broke down and set up cameras around the entire outside of the house and installed them when the kids were there and watching. They saw everyone go up and saw us check and remove all blind spots. The moment they saw that they would be on camera if they tried any of this again, the problems immediately stopped. Even the dealing moved somewhere else. It's been mostly peace and quiet with a few exceptions ever since. I gotta say guys, it is kind of ridiculous though to even need a camera in the first place to prevent your neighbors from doing some dodgy stuff. And I'm curious, did you ever have any neighbors who were acting similar to the ones in the story and where a camera on your part might have been warranted? Let us know in the comments. And the next story, our neighbors hate us after we got an extension built with full permission and the council rejected their objections for not having enough light because they had converted the garage into a dining room with windows without permission. By mutual agreement, we removed the front part of the hedges because my parents felt so bad that they wanted to do something for them. Neighbors decided to sue us and claim the entire boundary where the hedges were removed for themselves. Our houses were built 50 years apart and our house had its own hedges and was a corner house before theirs was built. We also have proof of how the space looked before the extension was built and hedges removed, and the way it was built, most of it belonged to us from the start. I say sue because they started this problem to begin with and wanted legal action, but refused to get a solicitor on the grounds of, why should I get a solicitor when you guys caused this? So we got a solicitor ourselves because my mom had been assaulted a few times and they were building walls and placing objects on the disputed space despite numerous police warnings. I have been assaulted myself, the wife has been charged, she has tried to run my mom over with her car before. We decided it was time to resolve it formally. It has been 3 years since this started. We are going through our solicitor and it is taking a long time, but we are getting there. We've been told to do absolutely nothing and just report and document everything, which is what we have done. We tried to resolve it ourselves, but it ended in assault, so we won't even go near them. They won't cooperate because they believe they did nothing wrong. Every week there's some sort of commotion and we will get harassed in some way. On the other hand, our neighbors on the other side of us are absolute angels and the elderly missus gave my mom some berries last week to make jam from. Update to the story, I just noticed that this comment absolutely blew up. 2 years after I posted this comment, one of our neighbors had been arrested for dealing certain illegal substances and the wife then decided to finally move out of the neighborhood. Thank God that these jerks are finally gone. And the next one, when I was 13, a new neighbor moved into the house next door to mine, which we share a driveway with. Our neighborhood is really close and like to have get-togethers and block parties, so we all got together and had a little celebration to welcome her. Immediately it became clear that she did not like my dad. A while later we find out that she has been telling our neighbors that my dad was inappropriate to her at the party. I know Dad would never act like that, but he is not a native English speaker, he is Middle Eastern, which is relevant, and hey, maybe some sort of wire got crossed and there was some kind of misunderstanding. So my dad goes to try and apologize to her. It does not go well and she tells my dad to leave, which he promptly did. Then she put up the security cameras. They absolutely covered her house, getting views of pretty much every angle, including lots of shots of our shared drive. Whatever, we thought, a lady has a right to put cameras on her house. Then the cops started showing up. She called them, claiming we had messed with her cameras or that me and my friends were shining laser pointers into them. The cops would leave pretty quickly because the supposed crime involved a camera, which somehow hadn't captured any evidence of the supposed crime. Then she started claiming that we were poisoning her yard. She spent a lot of time in her lawn, gardening and growing plants, but for some reason, every 6 months or so she would cut everything down and start over. Anyways, the cops started coming asking about our supposed poisoning of her lawn, but they couldn't find any evidence. We did not have any poison, her cameras had not picked anything up, and we had no effing motive to poison her lawn. So she started an inquest with the Department of Agriculture. A pesticide use investigator showed up and interrogated us and then took samples from her yard. While that was going on, we had a few fun encounters with her. Once she bought a giant floodlight and pointed it into our windows in the middle of the night. The fire department had to come and unplug it. Another time our dinner was interrupted when a massive hazmat truck came blaring down our street. Men in heavy gear poured out and charged into our house and then, minutes later, disappointedly filed out. One guy came and told us that she had bought a Geiger counter and used it wrong and had thought that we had irradiated her house. Finally, things came to a head when she sued us to get an order of protection. She claimed that my dad was a member of a terrorist sleeper cell intended on destroying her. She also claimed that he had used his skills as an engineer to develop a device that she referred to as a white ion laser, which would allow him to turn invisible and sneak into her house. She submitted 1 terabyte of film from her cameras, all of which was annotated with such incriminating evidence as "Squamish leaves the house, Squamish enters the house." There were also tons of photos and notes. It was here that we discovered that her cameras were pointed into my bedroom and had been filming me for years. I was a young lad by this point, so there's probably video evidence of some pretty embarrassing teenage behavior out in the ether now. We later legally forced her to move the cameras, but she kept moving them back, so I just kept my blinds closed for the better part of a decade. During the trial, the Department of Agriculture report came back. It was determined that crazy neighbor has poisoned her own lawn by over-fertilizing it. She received a fine for contaminating the groundwater. We obviously won the lawsuit and countersued her to get our own order of protection. We also had to legally get the files on us at the FBI and CIA closed since she had reported us to both agencies. Despite losing the suit, she continued to live next to us, occasionally calling the police on us or suing us again. All things accounted for, the cops were called on us 37 times, we were sued 5 times, and of course there were the investigations with various federal agencies. It's now been 10 years and she is finally moving out. Why, you might ask? Does she feel guilty for accusing us of crimes with no evidence for a decade? Had her paranoia finally driven her to move? No, she didn't pay her property taxes for 6 years and her house got taken from her. She tried to sue the city on a bunch of occasions as well and failed. Womp womp. This is only a summary of the situation, there's tons more. I have not even gotten into her kids, her husband's scam, the video she posted to YouTube of her dog dying, her faking a disability and so much more. Edit: people have been asking for more stories, so I will post some of my replies. The dog story. It was actually 3 YouTube videos, they are all just film of this pug's face. In the first one it is clearly sick and is covered in snot and is having trouble breathing. She is just singing to it and praying over it. In the second video the dog has blood running down its nose and is pretty obviously dying. Again she sings over it and prays. The third video starts with her screaming, "My dog is dead," and then it is about 5 minutes of film of this dog's corpse. The whole thing was clearly pretty disturbing and crazy. The next story, the husband scam. So, when she first moved in, she had a husband. We thought nothing of it, since plenty of people have husbands. He seemed like a nice guy too. Unlike the crazy lady, he was willing to talk to us and be cordial. He owned some local construction company and was pretty well off. Just barely a millionaire, if I had to guess. Well, after about 6 months, we see him loading a bunch of his stuff into a truck, and then we never see him again. By this point, we are well into the insanity, and so any crazy neighbor related activities sent off alarm bells at our place. So my mom starts investigating. She is a lawyer, so she knows how to search through people's legal histories with a fine-tooth comb. It turns out that this guy was husband number 4. We googled the previous husbands, and what do they all have in common? All were independently wealthy business owners. None lasted more than a year with her. Each one had a prenup which promised crazy neighbor a healthy sum of money. And then things start to make sense. Our neighborhood is not crazy high class or anything, but the people around us do well for themselves. Crazy neighbor didn't work, she barely left their house. Turns out she was living off of the husband's money. While she has lived next to us, we have seen husband number 5 and 6 fall victim to the same scheme. She actually would have been kicked out of her house sooner, but she convinced one of them to pay her back taxes for her, buying her some time. And the next story, the kids and the fake disability scam. I will preface this by saying that her insanity inspired a certain level of reciprocal insanity in my family, and my mom especially would take time every month or so to see what she could dig up on crazy neighbors' activities. Because of that snooping, we knew that the kids were supposed to live with her, but we never saw them. One was around my age, the other was about 6 when they moved in. We would see them maybe once every couple of years leaving the house, but that was about it. I cannot say with any certainty that they were actually living in that house, but they were supposed to be. And if they actually did, then they had a very little contact with the outside world. The disability thing comes from a similar snoop fest. We found out that she sued the city for violating her 14th Amendment rights as a disabled person somehow. We looked into it, and she was claiming that she couldn't stand or walk for more than about 5 minutes. And yet most every day we would see her out in her yard for hours doing manual labor. That suit ultimately didn't go her way, shockingly, and I'm pretty sure it had something to do with her eventually losing her house. I think she was trying to leverage the disability thing to somehow get away with not paying her taxes. But honestly, I'm not sure. Some other weird stuff that I just remembered: since we share a driveway with her, our garages basically share a wall. This setup has led to some funny encounters. One time, after we already had an order of protection against her, she waltzed up to our door and rang our doorbell to try and get us to sign a document letting her tear down both of our garages so that she could enlarge hers. We told her to get the F off our property. When it snows, we only shovel our half of the driveway/garage area since we don't want to start any trouble. One time my dad and I were out shoveling and she accidentally let her dog loose, not the pug from before. This is a breed I don't recognize, but to paint a picture, it is a medium-sized dog with a jagged body and a tiny head. It ran over and started barking at us and being threatening, so we threw some snow on it and it ran away. One time I noticed that the wood of our shared garage wall had cracks in it, and I got curious, so I peeked into her garage. It was full to the brim with cardboard boxes, and the door looked like it had been jerry-rigged somehow. I like to believe it was booby-trapped, but that's probably an embellishment. One of her notes that was submitted during the trial cryptically read, "I fear the man with the beard." The issue was that no one in our family had a beard at the time. That one was a head scratcher. And guys, if you have enjoyed the crazy neighbor stories from Askreddit so far, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments to show me that you really enjoy my content. Thank you so much in advance. Your support means the world to me, and it is incredibly important to keep my channel running. Thank you so much. The next one starts like this. I have lived in a high-rise a few years ago, and the guy directly above me was pretty cool and enjoyable. Some highlights: one Sunday night I was relaxing on my couch at about 10 PM. I was reading a book when suddenly it sounded as if someone was shooting a gun through my ceiling. I went upstairs and knocked on his door and asked him to turn it down. He told me that the city's noise ordinance does not go into effect until 11 and basically to go blow myself. I told him it was causing an issue and that he needed to turn it down, and he walked back into his kitchen and came out with a sort of broomstick with a grip he had fashioned of duct tape and threatened to beat me with it for asking him to turn it down. He ended up begrudgingly turning it down. I called the police on him because I could hear him beating up his girlfriend through my ceiling. They never got there in time and she never told them that he had hit her, so they never did anything. I'm about 90% sure that he tried to break into my apartment one day while I was out. He had stuck his head in my door when there was a plumbing issue with his tub drain leaking and damaging my bathroom ceiling. His eyes lit up when he saw that my place was nice. Shortly thereafter, someone tried to break into my place by going through the lock cylinder. I only noticed because it broke my lock and I couldn't get into my apartment at 3 AM when I got home. I got a new deadbolt immediately. One morning I was in the shower getting ready for work when water started pouring into my bathroom. I mean water blasting out of my sconce, shower tiles turning brown from being waterlogged, etc. I threw on shorts and ran down to the office. No one was there. I went to the maintenance office. Empty. I called every number for the company I was renting from. No one answered. I went to the apartment above me where this was coming from. No one answered, and by the time I got back into my place, the entire bathroom ceiling had collapsed and I had water damage visible in 2 other rooms and a whole hallway. I later found out that his junky girlfriend had nodded off while filling the bathtub to do laundry. There was a giant damn laundry room in the basement and the water was running full blast for a while as it overflowed. She destroyed my apartment and damaged a couple $1,000s worth of my stuff. She admitted to exactly what had happened. He came home and tried to talk his way out of it. The maintenance guy shut him down and told him he knew what had actually happened and that he was basically boned. He then made a throat-slashing gesture at me in view of the head of maintenance. He got evicted as a result of the damage she did and the fact that he threatened to murder me by cutting my throat. He blamed me for his eviction, so he started vandalizing my car. He kicked off the side window, he slashed a tire 2 different times, and he threatened to kill me one time when I saw him in a bodega in the neighborhood because he moved directly across the street when he got thrown out. F you, Eddie, you piece of garbage. And guys, unfortunately that was the last Askreddit story for today. However, please let me know in the comments if you enjoy the slightly longer Askreddit stories and I might continue with them. Because yes indeed, essentially Askreddit is a goldmine because there are so many interesting topics and threads that other people have not read yet. And guys, unfortunately we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.